Good evening, Metafriado GolfeTV viewers. The World Health Organization, WHO, disclosed in its recently released report that since 2017, over 700 patients and health workers have been killed, while more than 2,000 have sustained injuries in different attacks on healthcare facilities. The most affected countries also include Somalia, the Central African Republic, Myanmar, occupied Palestinian territories, Nigeria, Mozambique, Syria, Yemen, and Ethiopia. While talking to the journalists in Geneva, WHO's Director of the Health Emergencies Intervention, Altaf Musani, stated, "We are deeply concerned that 100 of health facilities have been destroyed or closed, health workers killed and injured, and millions of people denied health care they deserved." Mr. Musani, while giving further details on finding, added 1 out of 6 incidents have led to a patient or health worker's loss of life in 2020. Moreover, the reports concluded that most numbers of casualties was taken by health workers, said Musani. 2/3 of all attacks in 2018 and 2019 and 50% of all recorded incidents in 2020. Late Friday, the Justice Department sued Texas and Republican Governor Greg Abbott in federal court over the state's attempt to restrict undocumented immigrants' travel. According to the lawsuit, Abbott's executive order signed on July 28th would substantially disrupt federal immigration operations in Texas and is unconstitutional because states cannot take action to preempt enforcement of federal law. Attorney General Merrick Garland asked Abbott to rescind the executive order in a strongly worded letter on Thursday. The federal government was certain to sue when the governor declined to act. According to Abbott's order, only law enforcement officers may provide transportation to individuals detained for unlawfully crossing the border. Many of the detainees have tested positive for COVID-19, and their mobility across the state risks spreading the virus. According to the lawsuit, the federal government relies on contractors and non-governmental agencies to transport immigrants across the state so that they may attend hearings or travel if Customs and Border Protection (CBP) release them. Because Customs and Border Protection CBP stations are only meant to keep individuals for a limited period, they must be transferred. According to the suit, CBP has hired contractors to relocate approximately 120,000 individuals in the Rio Grande Valley region alone since last October. In addition, rather than limiting the spread of COVID, the lawsuit claims that Abbott's executive order will likely exacerbate the situation by restricting immigrants' access to medical treatment and testing. According to government attorneys, the directive would further worsen congestion at border facilities. The Justice Department has requested a federal court to immediately suspend Abbott's executive order until the case can be heard. This is our breaking news for tonight. Thank you for having me on Focal Point. Good night. Good evening, Metafriadoglo and dear viewers. 2 Myanmar nationals, Fayohen Tetu and Yi Yen Za, have been allegedly charged for attacking the UN ambassador in New York. The federal prosecutors have announced that the duo was involved in planning a plot to cause damage to the ambassador, Kiyo Motu. Tetu has been active in engaging attackers, while Za was involved in supplying money to them. As prosecutors have reported, the fundamental motive was to force the ambassador to step down from his post. A transaction of $4,000 have been traced from Za to Tetu, and a phone call has also been recorded in which the attacker is demanding $1,000 more to finish the ambassador off. Both of the arrested Myanmar nationals have been linked to an arms supplier earlier who sold weapons to the Burmese military. Early this year, the Burmese government has been involved in overthrowing the civilian government of Myanmar. The linkages and connections appear suspicious. To add to it, the Tetu lawyer did not respond to the questions put forth, while it is not clear if Za has hired an attorney even. The only comment which was reported was by NYPD Commissioner Demort Shi, as he said, as alleged in today's federal charges, these defendants reach across borders and oceans in designing a violent plot against an international leader on United States soil. Moreover, to add to the suspicion, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrew, tweeted, he questioned that the horizon of the court's papers, as the document never narrates that who was the ultimate orchestrator of the planned hit. Andrews further expressed his concern as, I am horrified by the news that a supplier of weapons to the Myanmar military allegedly paid 2 Myanmar nationals to harm or kill UN Ambassador Kia Motu in New York in a plot to pressure him to relinquish his post. Who was behind this outrage, and who will hold them accountable? The largest LGBTQ advocacy organization has erupted into the limelight after its president is under severe criticism for his part in discrediting the claim of a woman who accused Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, of sexual harassment. The LGBTQ advocates and organization officials are calling for the president's resignation. Alfonso David, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, has been repeatedly mentioned in a report issued by New York Attorney General's office. The report concluded the Cuomo violated the law and sexually harassed several women. Cuomo, on the other hand, has denied the charges and said that he will share the truth in his own report. David, who served as governor's chief counsel, has been accused of aiding Cuomo in discrediting one of the accusers of Cuomo. A significant number of cases mentioned in the report happened when Alfonso David was working as Human Rights Campaign president. According to the HuffPost and Washington Post, the organization's officials have pressurized David to step down as the president. David, on the other hand, has asked Cuomo to resign after the report findings. I was never aware of any allegations of sexual misconduct, and no one ever reported them to me. As the report verifies, said David, one of the 11 survivors, I only directly engaged with one, and that was on a personal matter that has nothing to do with sexual misconduct. According to the report, David wasn't informed about any sexual misconduct incident when he served as the governor's chief counsel. The reports further verified that he was only in contact with Lindsey Boylan, one of Cuomo's accusers, but that was only regarding a personal matter. Boylan is involved in most of these incidents described in the report. Reports further verified that David came to know about these allegations in 2020 when he was serving as Human Rights Campaign president. This is our breaking news for tonight. Thank you for having me on Focal Point. Good night. Good evening, Metafriado Glow and dear viewers. After a 14-hour-long debate, the Senate has passed a $3.5 trillion budget proposed by the Democrats. The budget, which mainly focuses on imposing taxes on wealthy and corporations, will make it possible to expand the major sectors such as education, Medicare, and environmental measures. The budget was passed after a tight clash of 50 to 49 votes, and with countless amendments. Chuck Schumer, the Senate leader, said, "Well, it's been quite a night. Look, we still have a ways to go, and we have taken a giant step forward toward transforming America." During the process, senators voted on 47 non-binding amendments, some of which were adopted by Republicans. Freshman Senator Tommy Tuberville proposed an amendment that would prevent federal funds from being used to refund police departments. The amendment was adopted by 99-0 votes. Senator Rick Scott also proposed an amendment that will make sure that terrorist groups like Hamas, a terrorist organization from the U.S. point of view, won't be benefited financially from tax money. This amendment was also adopted after a 99-0 votes. Furthermore, Senator Tom Carper called for a fund that will deal with climate change. Bernie Sanders, the chairman of Senate Budget Committee, during the debate proceeding, said that a lot of his Republican colleagues were in a bit of shock now. They are finding it hard to believe that the president and the Democratic caucus are prepared to go forward in addressing the long-neglected needs of working families and not just 1% and wealthy campaign contributors. Republicans said that the proposals from Democrats undermine the economy by raising taxes, cause inflation, waste money, and sanctify far-left policies that will harm Americans. They were glad to use Sanders, a self-described Democratic socialist, as a scapegoat for all Democrats who supported the bill. Minutes after passing the other key proposals of Biden's agenda, a $1 trillion compromise package of transportation, broadband, water, and other infrastructure projects, the Senate turned to the budget. That bill, which passed 69-30 votes, with McConnell among the 19 Republicans voting in favor, must now be approved by the House. This is our breaking news for tonight. Thank you for having me on Focal Point. Good night.
Good evening, Metafriadoglo and dear viewers. After the withdrawal of U.S. forces, Taliban has occupied Kandahar and Herat. With the U.S. troops leaving the land of Afghanistan, the forces of the Taliban have grown stronger than ever before. The biggest indicator is the occupation of two of the biggest cities of Afghanistan, Kandahar and Herat. The reports of the occupation were confirmed by Gul Ahmad Kaman, who has been serving as a member of parliament from Kandahar. The capture of Kandahar is not only symbolically significant, but also it holds tremendous strategic importance. Along with it, the terror in the native population is immense. In an interview, one of the residents, without disclosing his or her identity, said about the Taliban. They just stare at you while holding their guns. The fear inculcated in the population is alarming, as people want to leave to Kabul, but they are unable to find a way. One of the residents said that, "I am counting down my last days in this world. It makes me feel that God has betrayed me for being a citizen of such a country." While the Taliban are on the rise, a huge number of people are criticizing the policies of America. The spokesperson of the State Department, Ned Price, said that this is not abandonment. This is not an evacuation. This is not the wholesale withdrawal. With the emerging power of the Taliban, the British have decided to deploy 600 troops for the evacuation of the British nationals. Similarly, Canada has also decided to send the special forces. The area of the country which is under the control of the Taliban is more than 2/3 of the total area. And soon, Kabul is also going to be occupied by the Taliban, as report says. The Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on Thursday and told him the U.S. remains committed to the security and stability of Afghanistan in the face of violence by the Taliban. This is our breaking news for tonight. Thank you for having me on Focal Point. Good night.
Right, now calling in from the United States of America, we have our correspondent, Mr. Akano. She will be expanding on some of the breaking top developing stories from the United States. Now, good evening to you, Mr. Akano. My first question, in the light of the recent geopolitical disaster in Afghanistan, how is the Biden administration planning to evacuate the Americans still in Kabul?
Good evening, Metafria Doglo and dear viewers. On Friday, Biden has stated that the government has made significant progress in getting Americans and the allies out of Afghanistan as the country is facing immense difficulties in conducting a chaotic mass evacuation. He further added that after a brief pause, the flights had resumed from the Afghan capital, Kabul. Early on Friday, 2 officials from the U.S. government told in the last 8 hours there had been no flights from Kabul airports. The U.S. has been taking thousands of people to Qatar temporarily, but the U.S. ally has already hit its maximum capacity. The U.S. government is now in talks with European allies to continue the evacuation process smoothly. This is one of the largest, most difficult airlifts in history, says Biden. Any American who wants to come home, we will get you home, added Biden, while reassuring that any Afghani who helps U.S. forces in Afghanistan or is in danger will receive full assistance from the U.S. government.
Now, in your opinion, is President Biden fulfilling his responsibilities as a commander-in-chief?
With the emerging power of the Taliban, the British have decided to deploy 600 troops for the evacuation of the British nationals. Similarly, Canada has also decided to send the special forces. The area of the country which is under the control of the Taliban is more than 2/3 of the total area. And soon, Kabul is also going to be occupied by the Taliban, as report says. The Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on Thursday and told him the U.S. remains committed to the security and stability of Afghanistan in the face of violence by the Taliban. This is our breaking news for tonight. Thank you for having me on Focal Point. Good night.
Well, thank you to you as well, Mr. Akano, for expanding to our viewers today's breaking stories coming in, or rather related to the United States. So good night and catch you same time on Thursday. Moving on from that, let's tell you several thousands of people protested in London decrying Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Many waved the black, red and green national flag of Afghanistan and chanted slogans opposing the Taliban's takeover. Stop killing Afghans and stop oppression of Afghan women could be read on some of the signs.